Pulp MX Network production.
EVS Sports brings you a cheeky Brit and an American YouTube racing sensation weekly on the LVK More Than Moto podcast. Here's your hosts, Phillips and Kellen Brauer.
Welcome back, everybody, to the EVS Sports LVK More Than Moto podcast. Can't even say the name of it right. It is the Lewis versus Kellen podcast, which I don't even say that very often, but EVS Sports Namura Race Tech backing us on the show. We are back, Lewis, a week off for Loretta's, and I went on a little bit of a vacation. What did you do with your week, Lewis? Did you watch Loretta's much?
No.
No?
I don't understand it.
As in, you don't understand the point of the races?
We'll get into it in our Loretta's topics, but I don't understand it is kind of where I'm starting from.
So, but there wasn't like really any other racing going on. So were you just doing like research, or what was kind of like your week like?
Honestly, I don't really know what I've done. I was thinking this morning. Like, I don't know what I did over the last 2 weeks. I went to Disney World.
Okay.
One day. Yeah, don't know what I've done.
Okay, cool. Nice. Just nothing. Honestly, Kellen, you'll appreciate this from a journalist's point of view. I have 1 hour and 40 minutes of outstanding transcribing to do. Yeah, that's
sucks.
That sounds right on cue for sure. That's
a tough go.
Have you ever? I mean, this is getting all in the weeds real quick, but have you ever tried to use just like words transcription and then copy it back over?
Once. So in the MX Vice days, we did a television series for Monster Energy, or in partnership with Monster Energy. And part of the deal for the TV channels was that they needed essentially the TV show to be written out, every single word, so they could do subtitles and whatever in different languages.
Yep.
And I used an AI transcriber for that because that was what the broadcaster requested. And it took me 4 times as long. Because it makes it wrong, so then instead of just working yourself, you're correcting a computer's mistakes, which is so tedious.
Yeah, that's the problem with AI transcriptions too, because like especially with our sport, like there's so many words and phrases that have like nothing to do with real terminology. Like even the word hole shot, for example, they just type it out as WHOLE space and then shot. If it even gets it right in the first place, it might misspell it. So I feel the pain of that, but an hour and 40 minutes outstanding is a bit rough.
Yeah, no, to be honest, will I ever get through it? Probably not.
And I just got to start chipping away 10 minutes at a time.
Yeah, it's a rough go. It's a rough go.
Yeah, but since we did take a week off and there's been a lot that has happened, some team changes, obviously Loretta's, we're going to have some topics about that today. We're just going to go straight through with Moto today. So I know it's called More Than Moto, but we got a lot of Moto topics that we want to discuss before we head into Unadilla this weekend. So let's jump in, shall we? Before we do, big thanks to EVS Sports. Experience the pinnacle of knee protection and injury prevention with the EVS Web Eclipse knee brace. For over 39 years, EVS has relentlessly honed their engineering expertise, consistently delivering award-winning knee braces. This legacy of excellence is embedded in every facet of the new Web Eclipse, which represents the culmination of their tireless dedication to innovation and rider safety. Use code LVK30 to save 30% off today. Also, thanks to Namura, the leading provider of engine components for motocross, ATV, UTV, and personal watercraft for over 2 decades. Namura has been the preferred choice for premium and dependable engine components for more than 20 years. Whether you're restoring your vintage bike, rebuilding your four-wheeler, or upgrading your new 450 race motor, Namura has you covered. Our extensive line of cast and forged pistons, connecting rods, gasket kits, engine valves, and soon cylinder kits that enhance your engine's performance. Keep an eye out for our new and innovative products in 2024 and beyond. Stay up to date by following us on Instagram at Namura_technologies. And also Racetech as well for backing the show. Appreciate their support for 40 years. Racetech has been supplying the motorcycle industry with high-quality suspension components made right here in the USA. For modern and vintage, Racetech is your go-to source for suspension performance. And we have a Racetech fan topic from one of our kind of regulars at this point, because he's submitted a couple topics, and it's going to be fun to get into that. All right, let's jump into the show, Lewis. Yeah, so a lot of things have changed or happened, I guess, since we last spoke, and one of the big ones now that came out this week is Team Germany finally announcing their Motocross of Nations team, which, I don't know, you may have a different opinion about this. I feel like this is kind of the given, the obvious one that was going to happen. Maybe Tom Koch, but obviously Ken Roczen, Max Nagel on 450, Simon Langenfelder on a 250. Kind of makes sense to me, but you think that Germany could win the Motocross of Nations, correct?
Yes, and we weren't doing this podcast last year, but at this point last year, I was beating the same drum. Perhaps I was a year early. I almost believe it even more this time around, though, and let me tell you why. Max Nagel is going to cause some people to roll their eyes because he's been retired from MXGP for, I don't know exactly, I want to say 4 or 5 years at this point. But he is currently leading the German National Championship by 112 points. I think he's won 11 of the 18 motos. And in that, he is beating Tom Koch, Adam Sterry, Henry Jacobi, Jordi Tixier, etc., etc. So, like, you know, the good 10 to 16 guys in MXGP. By all accounts, he's riding better than ever. I actually don't know why he was left off the team last year, because I think most expected him to be in that spot 1 year ago. Besides the point, he's on form at the moment. If this carries over, he is the perfect third guy. And as we've seen time and time again, it's the third guy that lets the European countries down. Roxon can win his class. We saw that at Erne last year. He did exactly that. Lagenfelder can win his class, of course. If you want me to further strengthen the argument, Lagenfelder won his first ever GP at Matterley-Basin in 2022, beating Tom Vial straight up. So that gives you a good reference point, American fans, of where Lagenfelder's at, let alone the fact that he's third in the MX2 Championship currently and has been on the podium basically every week. There's no weakness. Of course, it's going to come down to luck and anything can happen on race day, but on paper, and this will shock some people, on paper, this is a team that is slightly worse than Australia. I'm talking the slimmest of margins. It is right there with Australia. And I think most people wouldn't think that.
Yeah. So to the point of Nagel, because I think, as you said, Roxon, Langenfelder, it's kind of spoken for. Like, they are the strongest part of Team Germany still, even though Nagel has so much history behind him with this team. Just kind of briefly explain, like, his current program, what's going on, and as much as you know, why he doesn't race GPs, or like why he retired in the first place, because it has been a while, but he still has been racing and like training people right this whole time.
Yeah, he's on the KMP Honda team in Germany, which is basically the #1 German national championship team. There's good money to be made there. And towards the end of his career, he was just kind of fluctuating from B team to B team to B team, which is obviously no fun for a rider who was once a title contender. Let's not forget, in the Villapoto year, it was Max Nagel who was running away with it before an injury. So yeah, it's just he is old. I mean, I don't know how old, but he is definitely old. But that isn't affecting his form. He is arguably riding the best he has done in the last 8 years, by all accounts. I'm surprised we don't see him wildcard and more GPs, but I think he's really let that part of his life go, which is also why I think he didn't race for Nations last year. But I guess the prospect of what they could potentially do is too tantalizing.
Yeah. I mean, so he did race Nations in 22 at Redbud. I think he's on a Husky at that point, and he rode very well for having been retired for 2 years at that point. And I feel that I remember speaking to him at that time that it was much more like he was still racing German championship, but maybe not as seriously as it sounds like he is now. Like, it was much more like he was kind of post-career trainer and then would race on the weekends, but just like doing his, normal routine during the weeks. Now it seems like he's a little bit more serious with the German championship. Is that maybe why he's found form again, because he's put more effort into it again this year? Or do you have any, insights into maybe why it's clicked this year for him?
Honestly, I think it's just a case of also really confusing, but I've just looked and I think he hasn't raced GPs since 2018, which is shocking if that's true. I almost want to question that, but that's what MXGP.com says. No, I think it just boils down to the fact that Max Nagel is a really, really good rider. Quite quiet. He was kind of lost in the era of Caroli dominance, which pre-Villapoto, MXGP was kind of at its least popular, maybe. I feel like, especially from an American perspective, there wasn't much interest, much discussion in the 2010 to 2014 years. That was kind of when Nagel was operating at his peak, you could say. Those were the years that he rode for factory KTM, factory Honda, etc., etc. But like 2009, 2010, Nagel was the one who was meant to give Caroli a run for his money. It was Caroli, and then Nagel was like the second guy. He was a Dessau, put it that way, if you want to have a comparison. So he is that good. You would expect him to win national championships if he's healthy. He's always had a problem with injuries, so that's caused some issues. But I remember even when he was on a TM, he was really, really good. He's just a good rider, but because of his what do you call it, persona, he kind of doesn't jump off the page. And like I say, he was kind of in the era where there wasn't much attention on what was going on in Europe.
Well, I mean, I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Nagel kind of falls in like the Tanel Leoc range, where he's always been very solid and like got the job done. But as you said, it wasn't for race wins very often, and it was also because he wasn't like super personable in front of people, so he doesn't get noticed for that. But yeah, like he was at, let's say, like a 5-year span, probably top 5 motocross rider in the world. Is that fair to say? Like, obviously MXGP side he was, but comparing with what was available in the US at the time, he was right in the mix for sure.
Yeah, in the mix. Impossible to say, obviously, but yeah, he was. Tanel Leoc isn't a bad comparison, but he was much better.
Yeah,
like considerably better. 9 GP wins in his career, first in 2008, stretching to 2016. That kind of gives you some idea of how long he was good for. Yeah, great rider. He should, like, don't get me wrong, is he going to win the open class? No. But can he be 10-10? Sure. And that's all you really need. If Roczen and Lagenfelder do their jobs. Roczen and Lagenfelder need to do what they can do, because you're still on a knife's edge. You're not the strongest team. So they do have to operate at their peak. There's not really a room for any mistakes or any bad days. But stranger things have happened.
Yeah.
2012 Lommel. No one thought Germany was going to win that day.
Marcus Schiffer, though, he showed up to play that day.
Well, exactly. That was Marcus Schiffer.
Yeah.
I would argue that this team is stronger than that team was.
I agree. And I agree with you as well. And I felt the same way last year when you said this. Germany is the biggest sleeper at Nations. And like people just say, oh yeah, like, you know, they don't have a complete team every year. But this year, like you said, probably feels maybe the most complete it's been, with the talent that they have, and that all of these guys now have Nations experience under their belt, because Langenfelder was not in that group before, but now he's more comfortable in that situation. So I think that helps a lot for all of them to be, you know, in that spot. The last thing I'll ask with this is, do you think it matters at all that they put Roczen MXGP Nagel open? Because Nagel will have the shorter break between motos, and Nagel's always been a workhorse, so I don't necessarily think it matters. But do you have any like qualms with that? Like, would you prefer to see Roczen do the back-to-back motos, MX2 and MX Open, with the MX, you know, the last race combined and all that stuff like that? What would you prefer in that situation?
I've always said that if I was a team manager, I would put my best rider in Open.
Yeah.
But there's never really been evidence to suggest that really makes that big of a difference. So I don't know.
Yes, I'm trying to come up with some of them,
to be honest,
I do feel like don't you feel like the guys that race the MX2 Open class, they just don't look like they have the same edge by race 3? Because it's a very short break, and especially for GP riders, that's what probably the shortest break they'll ever experience.
Oh yeah.
So that's very quick turnaround.
If you're a team like Germany where you have an American rider, you give them the short break because that's somewhat familiar to them. But I've always said put your top rider in Open, purely because, take Chase for example, in MXGP he's got to beat Hurlings and friends, whereas in Open it will be an absolute cakewalk for him to be the best rider in that class, and I feel like that would make such a big difference. But maybe not. I feel like you need to sit down and do the math. Well,
I mean, we need to see the teams. Like, that's the tough part about this, because right now if Chase goes MXGP, you're right, Hurlings, Fevre probably, maybe Geyser if they show up, Prado. But Prado raced Open last year, or was going to.
Yeah, they actually did it.
They did it. But you know, this year we know Hunter Lawrence is going to be an Open.
No, they didn't. Prado was MXGP.
But I thought he was going to race Open and then switched or something like that.
Yeah, they did switch, because Well, whatever. I can't remember what they switched to, but I do remember at the race he was like, "Yeah, I'm racing MXGP now," and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah, but then so whether it's Prado or Fernandez, that's going to be, one of those guys will be someone that Noggle has to beat. And again, they probably will, like you said. So he really just needs to be top 5 in the class to give them a shot.
yeah." And I would think that. So I'm trying to think off the top of my head. You would potentially have, let's say, Tomac. Let's say
Hunter Lawrence,
Landerin, Hunter. Let's say Fernandez. Let's say.
Who would go for France?
Honestly, I think France are cooked.
Yeah, because Renault's not going to be back, right?
Yeah, France are cooked. Out. Forget them.
Ferrandis?
Let's do a Team GB discussion soon. That's
yeah. Because Tommy's not going, right?
Well, he says not, but has there ever what's the worst result for a host nation? We need to start researching that because we may have.
I mean, come on. There's been host nations before that barely got teams in and stuff. Surely.
Has there?
Well, what was the scores?
I mean, okay, we may have to go back to the 90s.
No. What was the scores when we went to Latvia? All they had was Jonas, maybe on a 250 by then, in 2014.
Right, you get the next topic ready.
Okay.
We're going to end on this. I'm pulling that up because
the next topic anyway has to do with Motocross of Nations, regardless. But this is a whole.
Where do you think Latvia would have finished in 2014?
Well, I mean, the way that your tone is going to be like I'm going to look like an idiot for saying 11th?
12th.
Okay, so I wasn't that far off. 12th isn't that much difference, but
I would say that Team GB would be. Do you want to really grinds my gears? And this is ate at me. I've wanted to say this for a while. 2022 Motocross of Nations. I did a tweet. I did a tweet with my top 10 predictions on the morning of the race, countries. I put GB 7th, and a retired British Championship rider replied to it and said, "Way to show your support for the boys." It's sorry, GB are going to win.
Yeah, just being realistic.
And actually, I did it too high. They didn't finish 7th. They were worse.
Yep.
But really fucked me off because it's shut up.
Yeah. Okay.
But you're a retired rider. Grow up.
Okay. Let's get into our next topic. This one, I'm going to need some explanations because this sounds like the Harry Kula situation, and we just went over this at Washougal, which why was he racing for Finland, and now he's Estonian, and he's half one or half the other. But New Zealand announced their MX of Nations team, and Nathan Crawford is on it. And Nathan Crawford is Australian, ? So what the heck is going on with this? How did he end up racing for New Zealand in the end?
Okay, so I think that, first of all, it's important to clarify that we are taking this at surface level.
Yeah.
We don't know Crawford personally, and we're not around him. If you know him and you know that his mother is a New Zealander, then you would probably be like, yeah, of course. Of course. We're coming at it from a surface level of when he raced MXGP, when he's raced in Australia. There's never any reference, as far as I've seen, to New Zealand heritage. So that makes this news a shock.
Yeah.
If they had been constantly dabbling with Australian with roots in New Zealand, because, at the moment, New Zealand's kind of on a resurgence. And at no point has Crawford been mentioned in the, hey, yeah, and remember the Crawford guy, he has roots there. So it's weird from that perspective. But supposedly he does have a New Zealand passport, so it is allowed by the rules, etc., etc. He's a great rider. New Zealand actually has a really, really good team. But it's just weird because there's been no reference.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to compare this to the Kulov situation because it's the closest thing I can think of. I guess it's kind of Valandrin-ish too, right? Valandrin, South African born, Netherlands passport.
Because again, it kind of comes down to your own perspective on it, but when Vlaanderen was coming up, I always thought he was an out-and-out Dutchman. It surprised me when I found out he was South African.
I don't know. I don't think that I ever really realized that, but I mean, you're closer to the situation, so...
I've told the story. When Vlaanderen was in his rookie year of MX2, I didn't interview him because I was like, oh, this young Dutch rider isn't going to speak great English. So like that's how much I was like, he's Dutch.
Okay. Okay.
Dean, I'm trying to think. Dean.
Yeah, Dean a little bit, but Dean never.
Was it a surprise when we found out he was British, maybe?
Dean?
Yeah.
No, he was born in Scotland.
No, but when he was an amateur, did we all just presume he was Canadian? I can't remember what is like.
No, because Canadians don't have that accent, bro. So no
one has that accent.
That's a whole different kettle of fish there. Okay, so specifically to the Crawford point, though, he's, I guess, doing like, is there any part of this he's doing this because he wasn't gonna be Australia's pick? Like they were gonna go Webster, and so like he still maybe wanted to be in the race, and or is this literally just like suddenly now he's jumped ship and he is gonna be a New Zealand representative until the end of his career?
Yeah, that is weird. Like, why now? Why didn't New Zealand approach him before now? Has he only just made it public to New Zealand? Like, hey, has he kept this to himself? And then this year he reached out to Motorcycling NZ and said, hey, I'm available.
Yeah.
It kind of seems like that sort of situation, to be honest. The biggest part that makes this kind of controversial is Natsuki is riding very, very well. Has the support of KTM, similar to Crawford. And Natsuki, it's impossible to say because they're in such different championships, different situations. I don't think that Natsuki would work Crawford. I think that they would actually probably be quite similar. Maybe Natsuki would have the edge on his best day. Weird to me that Natsuki wasn't picked. Let's just leave it there. And then Natsuki came out on social media and said that he was asked to be the reserve rider and said he wouldn't be the reserve rider when there is an Australian on the team. And that's the crux of the issue. Crawford, for all intensive purposes, is an Australian. Look at his results from 2020. He's listed as Australian with Motorcycling Australia as his federation.
Yeah. To the point of Natsuki, though, they picked Brodie Connolly to race MX2. He's leading the MX2 championship in Australia. And Hamish Harwood is the, I guess, MXGP. Well, he's probably open rider. But anyway, he's leading MX1 in New Zealand. And look, Harwood, I'm not saying is a bad pick, but would you say Harwood or Natsuki in that situation?
Yeah, the Harwood one is weird, but I feel like he's just part of the furniture at this point.
I guess, but I'm saying like if you have to pick the best New Zealand riders, and let's not talk about Crawford for a minute.
Yeah, I think Natsuki has to be on the team.
That's what I'm saying. Like, doesn't it seem weird that Natsuki was already the last pick? Like, is this even the political side of it just slightly that New Zealand went, well, Natsuki's not even racing World Championship. He's not even in front of us anymore. He's literally in Canada. So like he's not even around. You know how like France sometimes would just not pick the MX2 guy because he's in the US? The same thing could be happening here, no? And they're like, well, Crawford's right here. He has a dual passport. Let's ask him.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is that. Out of sight, out of mind a little bit. But all drama aside, this is a very good team. Yeah. This team will have no problem making the A final and should push the top 10, I would think. Like, if they are 9th at the end of the weekend, I don't bat an eyelid.
Yeah, I agree. I and that, like, that's why it's probably a bit jarring because even Crawford specifically, like, could have a pretty darn good day, and suddenly he's, you know, representing New Zealand, battling for, you know, 7th, 8th in a moto or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that's where it's going to jar people a little bit. To be like, what? I thought he was Australian, and there he is, literally battling Kyle Webster, the Australian kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Probably will happen, especially with Webster on a 250. Webster is the better rider. We're seeing that in Australia.
Yes,
that's without debate. But put Webster on a 250, and Crawford will probably be right around him, I would imagine.
Yeah. Do we, to the point of these guys like having dual passports and jumping and all this stuff like that? Do you like that? Like, do you wish to, like, once you have raced for one nation, you're stuck? Like, that's
that's what I'd like.
But then that would eliminate, like, Amart ever racing for Team USA, like he did.
Yeah, well, it's dumb that he ever raced for Puerto Rico. Like, that's dumb.
Okay, no. So you're part of the group of people that think, like, Puerto Rico is the whole thing is a kind of dumb. Like,
hey, I'm from this country. I'm going to race for this country. Cool.
Yeah.
Moving on. Guam. Like, No, like, hey, I've got this passport now. See you there. Like, no.
Do you think that that's something where there should be a rules revision then to like make it your birth nation, or you have to be a resident for X amount of years at that nation or something like that kind of thing?
I just think that once you sign up for a license with an FIM affiliate, then you're locked in.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Crawford probably raced under the whatever the Australian.
Yeah, motorcycle in Australia.
Yeah, right. So that's what MAU or whatever, and now he's. I don't know. Is he still going to be racing under that license for New Zealand? The Motocross of Nations?
Look at Crawford's results in 2020 in MX2. He is listed as Australian Motorcycling Australia.
That's what I mean. So now he's gonna register for the Motocross of Nations for Team New Zealand under an MAU license. It's just
I don't know how that works. I think you can just race for whatever license. Yeah, you can, because I don't even know what this is, but I've got the 2014 Latvia results still open. France won. For some reason, Ferrandis and Frossard were under the FFM, but Paulin was under the MCM. I don't even know what the MCM is. And then GB was fourth. Dean was riding for the AMA, or not for the AMA, but under the AMA. And then the others were the ACU, of course. Okay, it's not super common. There's no other examples, but that you don't have to get a license with whatever country.
Yeah, I mean, either way, the crux of the whole conversation, the first point, it's weird. It's weird to see an Australian represent New Zealand, because as you have told me as well, it's not necessarily like New Zealand and Australia are best friends, no? So it's just kind of like, is he a traitor now too?
Yeah, that's my understanding of it. As I said, I lived in New Zealand, and I literally saw a man wearing a t-shirt that said, "At least I'm not Australian."
Yeah.
So I don't know what the beef is, but apparently there was beef. I don't know.
See, the ultimate baller move would be Crawford showing up to Nations wearing that shirt.
No.
Okay.
This isn't wrestling.
Well, I mean, some people would like it to be, but anyway, I digress. All right, let's get into our more like very current topics. And this actually just happened kind of this morning. And like, I don't know, maybe you had heard about this. I feel like I knew that this was coming a little bit just because of the whole nickel situation. But Shane McElrath is now out at Twisted Tea HEP Suzuki and has jumped over to the MadParts.com Kawasaki team for the rest of motocross and into SMX. I actually didn't see. Is it for 2025 as well, or is this literally okay? So it's 25. It's like the same thing Nichols has basically. Then it's just
and the same thing that Marchbanks has.
Yeah,
and
right, exactly. We'll get to that. But anyway, so just dissecting McElrath's time at HEP. How do you kind of reflect on how that happened and how it's gotten to the point where they would let him go mid-season to a different team, and they would have someone else who wasn't even racing for the program and was racing for a completely different factory effort is now coming in to basically replace him?
I don't know. The whole McElrath thing is weird. It's weird it's not weird because it's our sport. What I would very much like is for Suzuki to have put out a statement saying McElrath is released, even if it was just polite bullshit. Of course, it's McElrath. We know that he hasn't like lit the truck on fire, punched a guy. You know, we know it's nothing controversial.
Yeah,
it's just a case of it didn't work out. But if this was F1, it would have been coordinated. So Suzuki put out a statement at 10 a.m. and then Kawasaki put out a statement at 10:15. They all seem to manage to work in unison, so I don't like that. I wish we could do that better. It's funny because when McElrath joined HEP, it was actually quite a big signing for HEP. But then the way that HEP has evolved so rapidly, he's now like almost not good enough to be on the program, and that shift in HEP has changed within like 2 years. Weird, huh?
It is weird. Is it more weird to you, like, now that he's going to this program and this team? Like, do you believe that this is a positive thing for him, like that he was really struggling with the Suzuki? He mentioned how much testing they were still doing, even halfway through motocross and all that stuff like that. And he's changed a lot of bikes the last 3 or 4 years, and that's something we'll talk about in a second as well. But do you think that this is even a good thing for him now to go to just a different program and not have maybe the same expectations put on him as well?
Maybe, but I feel like you go to that program being Mad Parts Kawasaki, and it's impossible for you to come back from that. You're not going to Mad Parts and then in 2 years getting a contract from a top team. Which, let's be honest, Mad Parts isn't there yet. They seem to be moving towards that, but McElrath is certainly the biggest step up that program's ever had. Maybe the relaxed vibe will suit his personality. I don't think the HEP is necessarily not relaxed, but maybe the real privateer life will help McElrath. But ultimately, since he moved to a 450, I don't really know about anything because he did so good in 250s. As I've said a million times, Chase Sexton and Shane McElrath were neck and neck for a 250 title. How have they both gone in such drastically different directions? It doesn't seem feasible.
Well, I think that to that point specifically, McElrath like kind of Jordan Smithed his way into that championship in the first place because he had been around for a while. Like I think he turned pro in 2012, something like that. And Chase was 4 or 5 years after that. So Chase was kind of like hitting the normal trend of what a 250 championship should look like. McElrath found a spot on a Star Yamaha at the right time against the competition that was maybe not as, stacked Chase Sexton. But like, I don't know. I don't necessarily look at that title as like, yeah, look at how close Shane was to winning a 250 title. He should have been Chase Sexton.
I don't agree with this, but I feel like this is what people will think. McElrath was on a star bike. So did McElrath being on a star bike make us all believe that he was better than he actually was?
No, I think that my comment just now will make people think that I have a negative opinion of Shane or something like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that like, Shane is what he is. Like at his best, I think he's going to be a 5 to 10 guy on a 450. And a 5 to 10 guy on a 450 against a 450 Supercross champion, when you put them both on 250s, might be a little bit closer and might also be a lot better than other people that are on 250s. That's I think that's a fair assumption to make. Yeah. I'm not saying that's a bad thing about McElrath. I'm just saying that he's a very talented rider, deserves to be on a good team on a 450, but he's just not Chase Sexton. Like that's why I don't want to ever make that.
Of course. It's not that I expected McElrath and Chase to be on the same trajectory, but this is literally. You turn right and I'll turn left.
I guess, yeah.
It's not even in the same. It's not even in the same world.
Yeah.
I would have thought McElrath would be a 6 to 10 450 guy.
Yeah, well, that's what I said. Yeah. Yep.
But he's been worse than that for the most part, which is weird.
It is, but also again, yes and no. Chase, yes, has had a team change since coming to a 450. But Shane's had like 5. So he's had to keep learning a new bike like every single time. Like he's been on factory teams. He's been on factory equipment. He hasn't been. He's been on, he started with Moto Concepts and now he's on Mad Parts and he was on HEP and he was on Rocks. Like he's been everywhere. He's been all over the place. So it's been difficult for him to find any semblance of consistency because of that.
And if you want to play the Chase-Shane comparison, I think that one of the coolest parts about Chase is that I don't know if he was ever expected to be as amazing as this. Everyone knew he would be a top 450 guy, but did anyone really have him tipped as being the guy, maybe the best rider in the world on a good majority of the weekends? Probably not.
No, but so to the point of both of them and their upbringing, if you want to go back that far, yeah, Shane came out of nowhere. Chase at least was like Austin Faulkner's shadow his entire amateur career, but Shane was like nobody had a decent result on a privateer Honda at Loretta's in 2011 or 12 or something like that. And then suddenly it was like, someone's got to get him a ride, that kind of thing. I don't think Chase is ever that level. And that's why I don't like making that comparison. Chase is always going to be...
It's just a funny comparison because they were so close in points.
I get it. But let's get back to the topic of Shane and moving forward with this team. It obviously wasn't going well at HEP because he just kept talking about testing. And why I wanted to specifically talk about the expectations, as you said, like maybe HEP doesn't put as much pressure on him. But now that they have Colt, they've had Kenny winning races for them. Don't you feel a little bit like Shane was kind of lost in that he wasn't Chiz, who was actively testing the bike for Roxon and making their high-end performance better? he was just Shane, and he wasn't performing to Shane levels. That's simply what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely not a lot of leverage there on off the bike and like, grabbing attention and like whatever. He kind of just goes about his business. So when his business isn't necessarily going as planned, maybe there's nothing to really fall back on. It's weird though, because on HEP there were really great rides. What's weird is I feel like ever since McArath has got to 450s, don't you feel like he struggled with like arm pump and fitness?
Yes, but I don't know. Don't they kind of all?
No, again, I don't know. I think my overarching conclusion on this is this marks a very poignant shift in McArath's career, because this is almost an admission of like, I'm just here going to the races each week and doing my job, Like, as I said, he's not going to get a top contract now based on what he does here. It's not a program equal to programs he's been on in the past. It's kind of like it must be a tough pill to swallow to an extent, because in essence, it is him saying, this isn't going to work how I had hoped.
Yes, it does. But I mean, I guess on the flip side of it, I do feel that the positive side of this is for MadPartsKawasaki.com or MadParts.com Kawasaki, they really do actually have like a full, complete, these are our staple guys type of team now with Shane and Freddie Norton. Like, it's not just, and I'm not, again, trying to diminish John Short or John Cross or Bubba Pauly or any of those guys that were, borderline main event guys for them before. I feel like they genuinely have two staple main event guys, two guys that should probably battle for even top 10s on a regular basis at given points. And I think that boosts their program, no? Like, that gives them some chips at the table to go to sponsors and other people and say like, hey, this is what we got now.
Yeah, we need to start changing our perspective of that team. But it's hard because that gear is just horrible. What?
Oh, that's I was not expecting that. I was like, I thought you were going with performance, and you can't like circuit.
No, you just look at it, don't you? And you're like, ugh.
I don't know. It's kind of painfully European. I figured you'd like it.
It's Brazilian.
Yeah, but it does look very European. Like the whole get up from head to toe is very like, oh yeah, there's a lot of sponsors everywhere. There's a lot of colors. No?
No, it's weird that it's Brazilian, to be honest, because we had ASW out of Brazil. We've got Circuit out of Brazil. What's up with Brazil and gear manufacturing?
I don't know. They're probably in the comments right now typing Brazilian flags everywhere.
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe we can capitalize.
Maybe we can. Okay, so let's move on from that topic into the other kind of big shift, team news, whatever you want to call it, that happened during the off week. Obviously, the Colt Nichols situation with HEP as well, and we kind of already went over that a little bit. But Garrett Marchbanks had left club right before Washougal. That was a PR that came out I think on Thursday or so, and then we even I think hypothetically debated on our show last time that there's a shot he just ends up under the PC rig. Like, this is just, they have open bikes, they need people to ride, and boom, what do you know? He's now going to be on PC for the rest of the year. So he's finishing out the season on a 250 starting at Unadilla, and then rolling into SMX from there. I actually forgot to check the points. I think he's like borderline still in
He's 21st.
Yeah, so he's like right on the cusp. He'll probably make it. I mean, it'd be ridiculous if he doesn't. But really what I wanted to ask about this with in relation to the Masterpool situation, they're trying to figure out if we can get a 6 bike out there for Ty Masterpool. Now we get to kind of straight up mano-a-mano see what Garrett versus Ty looks like on this bike outdoors. Does that matter at all? And where do you think Garrett fits into this 250 class moving back on the bike outdoors?
Well, by all accounts, Ty has done a deal for next year for Supercross and Motocross now.
Okay.
So that's irrelevant. How low? Okay, let me don't. I'm not going to phrase it like that. What is your honest opinion of Garrett as a professional rider?
Solid. On his day, can win.
Solid is like with all due respect.
No, I wouldn't say with all due respect. I personally don't envision him as a champion yet in my mind. Like, not even necessarily future champion. I just am not there with him yet. I need to see consistent race winning speed every week. And I haven't seen that yet at really any point in his career. Yes, he won the Daytona Supercross. What happened after that? I think he got like 11th the next week. And then, yes, he almost won San Diego on a club bike. Kind of never looked like that again for the rest of the year, I feel like. No? So I just feel like there's too much inconsistency with him, which is why I say, like, yes, he's a solid rider. I'm not necessarily putting him at championship level yet.
If you want me to bet on whether Marchbanks wins a race at all next year, I bet no, because I feel like that's for safe bet.
Okay.
Oh, is that? I feel like that's not even that surprising.
I think he wins a race next year, but I don't think he wins a title.
Okay. Well, and it would have to be Supercross. No way he wins an outdoor.
Yeah. No,
right?
I thought that's what you meant.
No, that was what I meant. I just wanted to clarify that you don't think that's possible. I don't know. I just think Supercross will be fine. He'll be a third, fourth, fifth guy, which is kind of what you want from a secondary 250 guy on a coast. Outdoors, I don't know. I really don't. Like, I don't know. Top 10? Does he get top 10? I mean, hold on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the problem with Marchbanks and why he's been riding a 450 the last 2 years for club is because he's big. He's bulky. He's tall. He's just generally kind of too big for a 250, but he's said over and over again that he has unfinished business on a 250, and this is now why he's gone back to Pro Circuit Kawasaki. The thing that's going to hamper him is starts, like 100%. Like, can he run the pace of, I don't know, let's just say Levi Kitchen? Yeah, probably. But he's going to start 22nd every moto.
You think he can run that pace outdoors?
Yes, but maybe not right away. But next year, sure. With a year on the bike testing it, yeah.
So Millville, Masterpool was 8th, Jordan was 9th, Bobo was 10th. What is it categoric in your mind that Marchbanks can beat them all?
I'm skeptical on Masterpool. I don't know what to say about that. I think he is there with Jordan Smith on outdoors.
See, I think he's there with Bobo. I think he's on the fringe of.
I think he's better than that.
But Jordan's been riding really well.
Oh, he has for sure. But I think that
the results don't tell the story with Jordan. Jordan is podium speed every week.
But I think that's the thing, is that Jordan and Marchbanks, and probably why I would say they're almost identical, is that Jordan, when has he gotten a start this year? Hangtown, Moto 1? Anything else? Nothing? You know what I mean? Like, that's going to be Garrett. So Garrett's going to be coming from 20th every moto and get 9th and 7th.
This is my official stance. At Ironman, we will go, oh yeah, I forgot Garrett was here.
Okay. Yeah. There's been a few of that this year for sure. Where we're just
that's
like,
what I think. Yeah. That's by that point we'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot he started doing this. Like, obviously this weekend you'll pay a bit more attention, and then by Ironman we'll be like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Just to the topic of starts though, the last time he raced a PC Cowie, and I think even AC like admitted that it was underpowered off the start. Now it seems to be maybe the best bike off the start. You could put it squared pretty much with, Honda and Star, I would say. Does that even help him a slight bit, or is it just, nope, he's too big, he's going to lose, 5 feet off the first 20 feet of the gate every single time?
Honestly, you're putting so much emphasis on starts. I don't really even consider that. I just think straight up he will be a 9th, 10th place rider.
Oh, no, I think that he has... I would not be surprised Unadilla he qualifies like 4th and then starts 20th both motos and goes 8-7 or something like that.
Okay, I'm very curious now because maybe I'm massively underestimating him if you think he can qualify 4th.
Well, I mean, I just think against the current crop in the field, like, even looking back to his amateur career, he was faster than almost every single guy that is of his age group. Like, he was a very highly touted amateur racer. And I think he's now kind of proved that the speed is there, right? Like, the ability is still there.
Okay. How many years has he been pro?
5.
Is it not time to stop dealing with hypotheticals?
Yeah, it should just be that's where he is. But I think that you have to give him a little bit of like a speed bump from being on a club bike. And
Like,
and I don't know where that
all of
fits
your argument
in.
there was just could and back in amateurs, and that's almost irrelevant now because we've got 5 years of data, and none of that could you lean on to tell me why he would be fourth in qualifying.
I don't know. I have a feeling. I will say top 5 qualifying, top 10 both motos.
See, again, I can see top 10 both motos, but the bottom end of that.
Okay, then what do you say? Where does he qualify? 8th and goes 8-8?
He's just going to be a 9, 10, 11 guy.
Okay. If he does make it into SMX, and this is like a whole different kettle of fish for sure, but he was very good on a club bike in Supercross.
Mm-hmm.
We never saw him on a 250 in SMX last year because he was on a club bike in the 450 class. Does he suddenly become like borderline, wait a minute, Garrett Marchbanks could be a race winner in SMX?
No, in SMX he will be 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay. So you think
because you've got to remember that's one combined class. So apart from a couple of really good rides, in Supercross one coast he was 3, 4, 5. So add in everyone, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay, so but again, like I feel like I'm giving him just a slight PC boost. I feel like you're leaning on his club results.
No, I'm giving him a very slight PC boost.
Okay.
Like 0.1%.
Yeah. Anyway, well, we've gone on time with this, and I think that we're pretty fair in our assessment of where he ends up this weekend. But he might surprise, or he might, I don't know, might shock in the other direction. We'll see. All right, let's get into our last 2 topics, and they kind of piggyback off of each other. And the first one is a Racetech fan topic of the day. So Racetech Gold Valves provide a plush feel with drastically improved bottoming resistance and increased traction. All Racetech products are 100% guaranteed and made in the USA. Our first question today comes from at JD Beach 95. JD Beach, street bike galore and flat track racer and all that stuff like that. And he said to me, said Luke Renslin won the A-class title Loretta's 2 years in a row, but never got a good pro ride. And he kind of wants us to more or less open-ended discuss this. And we just come off of Loretta's, and I know that you don't know much about the amateur scene here, but aesthetically speaking, the Luke Renslin situation, what is your opinion of him having 2 A-class titles and not making it? Like, if you're just an outsider looking at it because you don't know much about the amateur scene here, do you look at that as like Luke Renslin failed, the amateur scene doesn't necessarily provide enough for it, or what?
No, I just think that you have ebbs and flows. Some years, the talent is deep, so the top 2 riders, 4 riders are must-haves, and some years, the talent level is less so even winning does less for you. It's not an automatic you win, you're worthy. It's all relative to the competition.
Right. Okay, let me kind of break down Loretta's for people who don't really like understand.
Oh, good. This will be good for me.
Understand like what the pro sport versus the B class and all this stuff really makes sense with, because the reality is the best talents that come through, the Jets, the Degans, all that stuff like that, they very rarely touch the pro class, the pro sport class, which used to be the A class at Loretta's. They are almost always B to pro right away. And it's usually B to pro at the end of nationals. Sometimes it's B to pro after a Supercross Future season, and then they start outdoors. Everyone's been a little bit different of late, but really the crux of it is that the B class is kind of where you find your superstar talents coming from, because the Horizon winners of late have been guys like Caden Braswell, who won a pro sport title 2 years ago. And what's Braswell doing now? Like, that's kind of the trajectory that people go on, and Drew Adams is riding this right now, although he did race pro class at Loretta's. The trajectory that they ride up is that they start taking off in super mini senior, hit their stride in B, and by that point they're already probably ready to go pro. And the guys that stick around and race pro sport and so on and so forth, and all them listening to this are probably going to be pissed off that I say that, are probably wasting their time doing it, because they should already be making that transition to the pro ranks. So that's why you see these like top pro sport class riders. Like, okay, here's a perfect example. Gavin Towers. Gavin Towers won 250 pro sport last year, and he told you and I don't want to touch Loretta's again this year, because it's true. If you go back to Loretta's as the defending pro sport champion, doesn't really mean much. And that's unfortunately what Luke Renslin went through in his career. So you really want to kind of tap each stepping stone and launch into the pro ranks. If you're getting stuck doing pro sport 2 years in a row, or not really making like if you do B and then pro sport and you win both back to back, okay, good. But if you go B pro sport and win B and then finish third in pro sport, we're struggling a bit here. Does that make sense?
A little bit. It's very hard for me. I think ultimately people are putting too much stock in Loretta's. Like, none of these top riders are getting their rides solely based on Loretta's, are they? There's other data, and it's like no one's sucking all year, getting second at Loretta's, and then okay, have a contract. It's all like a bigger picture. It's not just you don't win Loretta's, get on a podium, get handed a trophy, a medal, and a contract. But I think some people genuinely believe it works like that, where you won Loretta's, have a contract.
Yeah, it kind of did used to work that way. But even if you go back to the days of Ricky, James, before that, like the naturally best talents that were going to be very good pros kind of just danced through Loretta's into the pro ranks. It wasn't like they, even like AC, he skipped pro sport /A. He went B to pro right away, save for Cooper Webb. It happens with a lot of those guys where they find that ascension level into the pro ranks very quickly. And if you level out right at the end of your amateur career, it's going to be a tough transition to the pro ranks. Like you still want to be going up. And, to the point of Loretta's and the classes you should pay attention to, more or less the best class to watch every week in terms of who's going to be good as a pro is the mini seniors or the super mini class, because it's full of guys that in 2 or 3 years are probably going to be landing a factory deal. And it's the Seth Dennis's, it's the Landon Gordon last year won super mini. And now look at him. He's very, very good on his Team Green Kawasaki. Drew Adams rolling through, all that stuff as well. And you're right, Loretta's we shouldn't put as much of a stock weight on, because now there's combines, there's Supercross Futures, but that's just 250s. I'm talking about the kids that are coming from super minis, and you look at how they do it. Minios, Freestone, Cal Classic, Mammoth, Loretta's, and just kind of take a blanket of it. If they're ascending upwards, they're going to get out of Loretta's before they even touch pro sport class.
Can you start the next topic? Because what I want to say, I kind of need the next topic to start. So say the next topic and then I'll reply.
Okay, so from that, our next topic is really just kind of open-ended discussion on EMX 250. And part of this discussion is because obviously the US has been trying to mimic, if you want to call it that, with combines and Supercross Futures, what EMX 250 is doing on a developmental level. But you have a different opinion about EMX 250, so go ahead.
Okay, I forgot that was the topic. What I was going to say is I don't understand Loretta's with the whole Pro Sport and B and A and F and Z and 2 and hashtag. I don't understand why it can't be as simple as 250, 125, Super Mini, 65, 50. Like, we've got 25 plus and 50 plus, and it's like, there's too much for my little brain to understand.
Okay.
No,
I mean, yeah.
I turn it on and I'm like, oh, that class is racing.
You're right, but
I don't know who's in this. I don't know what's going on. Like, oh, you're in this, but I saw you earlier, but the guy you were battling with isn't in this for some reason, but you're in this, so why are you here and he's not? It's all too much for me.
You're right, but Loretta's is, as much as we like to look at it as like, here's the future of the sport, Loretta's is also just the amateur motocross championship of the U.S. So it is all amateurs, C level, B level, A level, young kids, older guys, obviously, just amateurs in general. So that's why there's a myriad of classes, and that's why Kiefer and Mike Brown are racing, and also PW50s go, moments after them and stuff like that. So it's tough because you're right. Most people go, Loretta's, who's coming up next? But the reality is it's 36 motos of a varying different levels of skill set, because it is the amateur national championship for everything.
To tie both topics together, winning whatever amateur series really means nothing, because Morgan Lesiardo is the poster child for winning an EMX 250 title doesn't actually mean much. And everyone listening to this has just gone, who the hell is Morgan Lesiardo? And exactly. Because he won the EMX 250 championship on factory Kawasaki. And it meant fuck all once he got to pros. Didn't even I mean, certainly didn't have a podium. I would say he never had a top five. Maybe not even like, so wherever it is, whatever the format, whatever's going on, it doesn't necessarily guarantee anything. There's so much more to consider. So much more.
No, and to your point about ebbs and flows earlier, and probably to the Luke Rensland situation that we mentioned, like 2 years ago, Cole Martinez, who is 28, 29 years old now, won a Pro Sport title at Loretta's, because that's how it works. You can have, pro national points to your tally and then race a Pro Sport class. Hence why some guys race nationals before racing Loretta's, Trevin Nelson, etc. So yeah, like I feel like it's a mixed bag, because there's always going to be the cream of the crop, the most talented kids shine up. And while Loretta's does maybe showcase that on a certain level, it more showcases them when they're young. It more showcases that 12 to 15-year-old gap. That's where you really kind of notice these are the next kids coming at Loretta's. And then from, the ages of 15 to 17, there's a myriad of different ways that it could go right, but winning or losing a Pro Sport title at Loretta's is not necessarily the way that it proves that it's going to go right or wrong.
What I like about the whole EMX thing is very, very clear cut. Where are you going after EMX 125? EMX 250. Where are you going after EMX 85? EMX 125. It's very easy to follow the progress leading to pros, which, to my point earlier, I struggle with Loretta's because everyone's kind of doing their own thing with different schedules and different classes, and it's all too much for my little brain. At least EMX is very clear cut of like, oh, the EMX 125 riders, apart from the odd guy who's exceptional, they're all going to go to EMX 250, and then we'll see what happens there. Yeah. There's no like, first place in EMX 125 is going to go and race EMX 250 plus, and second place in EMX 125 is going to go and race EMX 250 stock. So, it's all like everyone's just funneling, and the current is taking everyone in the same direction.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure it is here as well, but I struggle to like make sense of it as much in my brain.
Yeah. The thing I'll ask about EMX as it pertains to my discussion with Loretta's, and like you can skip steps more or less and still be a very good pro, as a lot of the guys from the B class go straight to pro and are very good. Has there not been a lot of, or some guys, I guess, that have gone on to win championships and so on and so forth that barely did at EMX 250, barely did EMX 125, like they almost just went right into MX2? Is that a thing?
Yeah, Kai Carsmakers got a ride out of EMX 125 straight to MX2 and did fine, was like immediately a top 10 guy. I personally think they can do away with EMX 250. I don't think it's needed. Just let the riders race 125s and then put them in MX2 after that and let them figure it out. If they're going to learn in EMX 250, they may as well learn in MX2. What's the difference? Same difference.
Yeah. But
because the level of EMX 250 is at such a point now where it's basically MX2 part 2.
Yes, and I understand your point with that. I disagree with it, though, just for the simple fact that, and part of why Loretta's is still somewhat of a good stepping stone for these guys. Yeah, if you put Drew Adams on the track right now and he goes 12-12, the confidence is going to be diminished immediately. And so to have the ability in Europe, and I always go back to Kevin Horgmo as this is an example, and Horgmo was like a 19th place guy in MX2 when he moved up, and then went back to EMX 250 and reestablished his career, and suddenly he is was a persistent front runner in MX2, and I don't know, I feel like he rebuilt his career. So I think that's why having that there is still a positive for a lot of these guys, because if they are 16 years old, thrust onto the track and go 15-15, they're going to be like, well, this is my life now.
Yes. And that is a very good argument that I have absolutely no comeback for and no way to refute it. But my opposing stance is this is professional racing. It's not meant to be easy. Your confidence isn't meant to be protected. You've just got to figure it out. Sink or swim. It's professional racing. We're not like, it shouldn't be like, oh, but his confidence is professional racing.
No, I understand your point. You look at other disciplines, especially when you look at motorsports, there's all these stepping stones. IndyCar has Indy, Next, NASCAR has a nationwide series and the truck series. F1 has Formula 2, or F2, and I think it's called, is it F3 or is it GP3 or something like that?
F3.
F3, yeah. So there's always stepping stones. And I think that while your point is correct about EMX 250 probably taking away what should be like a better overall gate in MX 250, like you could have guys that are, the Kaz Volks and stuff like that could be doing better and mixing it up with the MX2 guys right now. I still think that there's something to be valued and learned from them going out and winning that and then stepping up to that class a year later.
Fair. I've got to take a rain check, Kellen.
Okay.
Time's ticking.
We're at the end of time anyway. But good topics today. Thanks to JD Beach for sending in that topic and getting us to debate Loretta's, because Lewis has no idea. And now we're teaching him all about the American way. He'll be at Loretta's next year burning his.
I still have no idea.
off.
No, but this is part of the reason why I don't want to go to Loretta's, because I feel like I'll be stood there like, what is going on?
Well, you'll just see a lot of racing.
Well, that's not. Who cares?
Who cares? All right. Anyway, big thanks to EVS Sports, Namura, Race Tech for backing the show. Appreciate all their support. And now we get to go racing again. Unadilla coming up this week, and we'll be back next week to discuss some things that happened at Unadilla and preview Budds Creek. And GPs, Canada, all over the world. We'll be talking about it here on the LVK More Than Moto podcast. Thanks, guys, for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.